OG Rose here, and today we're going to talk about a paper called On Love. And the first thing I want to talk about is the method. Wittgenstein once said that the limits of my language are the limits of my world. And, taking that on face value, if we can isolate terms, because, a lot of terms are blurred together. People will say happy, enjoyable, likable, and use them all to mean the same thing. But if Wittgenstein is correct, and there is some relationship between language and the world, the more I conflate terms together, the more I actually conflate my world together. And when I conflate my world together, I blur my world together, and it becomes more difficult to define my world, to distinguish the different aspects of my world in a way that is meaningful. If I can't isolate, say, the meaning of the word love from the word like, then maybe when I use the word love, I mean something different than just merely like. But it becomes like a Schrodinger's cat, a sort of bothness, and it's hard to tell what exactly I'm talking about if I don't ever take the time to sort of break down and isolate the word love to a particular phenomenon. Now, there may be disagreement about which phenomenon we ultimately determine that the word love should signify, but the very act of sort of going through and isolating meanings, isolating words, and sticking them to particular phenomenon, the more and more I can get a clearer sense of the world. So in this paper, it's called like Seeking Definition. And there are other papers kind of that follow this method. There's a paper called On Wisdom, on Trust, different things. But this one is going to be on love. So it opens asking, what do I say when I say I love you? If I mean you make me happy, then there's really not a meaningful difference between the word love and happiness. If I mean like I'm happy around you, well, then I just mean I love you means I like being happy around you. And if love is just merely happiness, we should just get rid of the word love and use the word happiness. And we're going to move on. If by love I mean like, and by that I mean approve of, then to say I love you means I approve of you. But that might be considered very self-centered, non-sacrificial. And frankly, if love just means that, then we shouldn't use the word love. We can deconstruct it and just say approve of. If we mean something like I love you, and we mean by that I put up with you when you don't make me happy, well, that means tolerance. So love has no meaningful distinction, meaningful difference from the word tolerance. And also too, if there's like different issues with love, if I can only say I love you when I know you fully, well, arguably nobody ever knows any other person or even themselves fully. So there's something embedded in the concept of love that's always striving after something it never reaches, that it must be understood as something kind of destined to fail, and yet, does that mean we shouldn't use the term love? So, as we're going, what are we doing? We're defining, isolating the word love from other terms it's often conflated with, and we're starting to try to understand certain characteristics of love. If by love it means I'll let you do whatever you want to do, well, what if you want to commit suicide? I mean, if that's the case, then love may not necessarily be good. So there has to be something about love that maybe enables people, but not under all circumstances. If I mean like by I love you, I'm kind to you, well, then again, love just means kindness, and the terms would be deconstructed. So I'm not going to go, give the paper away. It gradually is going to work through and settle upon a meaningfully distinct definition of love. And I think it's important to do that, because if we don't, then we're going to not really be sure what we're talking about when we say we love someone, and they're not going to be sure what we're talking about. Everyone's just going to fill the meaning of that term with whatever they take it to mean, and that could lead to a lot of confusion and misunderstanding. And there are other, like I said, we got to go through justice, freedom, all these different terms. And I mean, this is obviously a kind of Socratic method that I guess kind of blending with a little bit of with Wittgenstein there to really isolate the terms. And I don't want to make the mistake that Karl Popper warns about in The Open Society, where he says, you don't want to be someone who says you can't use words unless you know the meaning of every single one of them, because there's a certain totalitarianism there and a certain essentialism there that can be dangerous. And he goes on to that, but at the same time, there is something to be said. If the limits of my language are the limits of my world, then the defining of my language is the understanding of my world. And so I think it's a useful practice. So anyway, that's the paper on love. I hope you have a chance to read through it, see what you think, and you can find more at ogrose.com. Thank you for your time.